what I want to do is keep it as informal as possible tonight. So if while I'm talking you have any questions at all, or you wonder what happens if I do something else, or can I do, I don't know, some random thing that you think should be possible, just ask, shout out. If you're on this side of the room, I've become deaf in this ear since I flew in a week ago, which is a little bit concerning, but I'm sure I'll either get used to it or it'll go away. Shout louder from this side. This side can sort of quieten down a bit. But so first of all, go to this URL up here, and if you're planning on following along, follow the instructions. I'm not using SBT, partly because I had various issues making stuff compile consistently. So I've just grabbed a snapshot of all my current work in progress. I've thrown it into a single jar file, and what I'm going to show you is running on the Scala 210 REPL. By the way, who's planning on following along? Okay, so yeah, maybe about 10 people. Any problems so far? Cool. So okay, a question: Who knows anything about Rapture, the software library, rather than? So a few cautious hands. Someone at the back there, very keen. So Rapture is it's a collection of libraries. The most complete of which is a JSON library. So I'm going to show you a lot of JSON examples today. And it also has an I/O library. The general theme of the libraries is to deal with sort of the mismatch between the dynamic world and the static world. So Scala, everything is, or hopefully most things are statically typed, but we have to deal with stuff that we don't have types for. And the philosophy is to try and be as type safe as possible, take advantage of the Scala type system, try to be as intuitive as possible. So talks I've given before have sort of had 50 or 60 slides, each of which has a single line of code on that does something that's intuitive. You can read that line of code and have a reasonable expectation as to what that will do. I've put a lot of effort into, well, I've used quite a lot of advanced features in Scala in developing the Rapture modules, but they're not so much visible from the point of view of someone using that. So there's hopefully quite a good abstraction over the ugly details, but hopefully you'll see today that you can write quite beautiful code at the application level, and hide a lot of the details you might need to write if you, for example, use the Java I/O or the Java Net standard libraries, or indeed many of the other JSON libraries out there for Scala. So is everyone ready with a working REPL in Scala 210? It's got to be Scala 210, otherwise you'll get a. No, sorry, I didn't make a build for. So Ryan's been good and just asked me a question. So this follow his lead. Okay, so I've got a list of about 30 lines here. So I'm gonna type stuff in. I'm going to see where it takes us. I've not got much of a plan beyond the first half an hour. How long have I got, Alexi? An hour. Okay, yeah. So beyond the first. I don't know how long it'll take. Let's see. So I'm going to start by importing some stuff. Two things: rapture.uri._ and rapture.net._. And I'll tell you why I've imported these. This will allow us to create a URL. So if I type in, let's call it sample, Now, I'll show you this. By the way, I don't have the ability to talk and type at the same time, so there will be moments of silence as the words appear on the screen. So I'm going to put this URL in here. And does this look odd to anyone, particularly the URI prefix for the string there? You all seen that before? Has anyone seen that before? Hand should at least be up for one of those questions. So, which one? So this is a string context. So this means that this string in here will be interpreted in a special way. And you can see that because the result type we get is an HTTP URL. So this is what I will, in a very vague sense, call a resource. Resource is a concept from Rapture.io. It's not a trait. There's no methods it needs to implement, but it's for example, an endpoint. It might be an HTTP URL, might be a file, might be a port on your computer. Something that will have I/O type operations done on it, without actually specifying what those are. So I'll call that a resource, and in particular, this is an HTTP URL. Okay, so this I think is quite a neat way of writing it because you get to specify the URL in its exact terms. There used to be a way of doing it by this is actually an alternative that's still available. You can write that. So if, for example, you had the last part as some sort of variable there, you could write that if you wanted to. That's an option. Yeah. It doesn't fail as it should do. I've got work in progress on a macro that will. It'll fail at runtime. I would love it to fail at compile time. So if for example, what's a bad URL? Okay, well this will fail at. If I do HTTP, there we are. That won't work, and this is a compile error because it knows that actually it doesn't know how to deal with an HTTP resource. So we get some compile time checking. What I would like to do is actually at compile time read that string, split it into the slashed parts, and have that checked. So checked and verified, so you don't accidentally include something you shouldn't do, like a space. A space would be. This is a. I could do, yeah. I wouldn't want to make that part of my compile process, though. I wonder if that could actually be an import. I could have an import that says check URLs, and it could send a request and check it, send a head request. Yeah, that's a possibility. I probably don't want to do that though. But yeah, if you want to do, you could. So we've got this sample. That's still working. Now. That's one way of writing a. I'll show you something first. What if we wanted to read the contents of that into a string so we can actually use it? I can call sample.slurp. Oh well, if I import Rapture.io, I can call sample.slurp. Well, there's an error here. Now the error says, cannot find implicit reader for etc, etc, etc. Maybe you need an implicit character encoding. Okay, so it's saying I won't read this data into a string unless I know what the encoding is. And this is a common thing in Rapture. It will force you to import things to specify, or in a very declarative way, what you're actually doing. So let's import. I need to import loads of stuff. Let's import Rapture codec. So you'll notice that there are lots of imports. I use them very extensively. So we've imported encoding now. We've imported encoding from the codec project. If I go back up here, in one line, albeit with some prelude declaring how we're going to make it make sense of it, we should, if I've got a net connection. Have you guys got net connections? Oh, there we are, okay. We've got some content, and that's just pulled it into a string. And that was pretty easy. Should we try a different URL? Someone tell me their favorite URL. That sounds like it might be a good suggestion or a bad suggestion. Oh, we've got an exception. Unknown host. Did I misspell it? Let's go for one I know. I've maybe lost my connection. Sorry? So it seems like I can't actually access URLs at the moment. No, I've got no net. Okay.
Do you need to guess a network connection?
No, I was connected. Oh, no, it's pinging now. But it looks like a DNS issue. Oh, okay, that's working now. So I've slurped Google as characters. Now, one thing you might notice is that I specified the type here, character, because the units I'm slurping. Each one is going to be a character. That requires an encoding. What I could do is slurp bytes instead. And what do we get? We get something of type bytes. So this one came back as a string. This one came back as bytes. So this is using Scala's dependent method types to work out what the accumulating type should be. And we get this return type called bytes, which is just a wrapper around an array of bytes, which gives you a nice two-string method and does equality properly as well. So that's just a convenience. Is that all okay so far? Not seen anything too useful yet, have we? So, was it source? Let's call this. Let's call this source. Okay. So this is just a string, but we probably recognize this as JSON. So what should we do? Should we try and parse it? Yeah. Sorry. You can't yet, but I think that's not too difficult to do. That's something I could. Well, maybe not. No, there's one issue with that in that the type on the slurp method is the sort of unit type. Each thing it gets, and each thing is not a JSON. Each thing is a character or a byte. The return type is generally something completely different, so string or bytes. So I thought about this before. I wondered whether I could actually make the type parameter to slurp string or bytes rather than character and byte. But there were some issues with that. I can't remember what they were, but it's only one other method call. So hopefully not a massive thing. Oh, well, no, there is better. There is another way, and I'll show you later. Yeah, that's about.
Step, you can do create a limiter such in a way that you consume it as a JSON. Okay.
So yeah, I'll show you that working in a different way without using slurp. I'll show you that in probably 10 minutes or so. So first of all, we need to import Rapture JSON. So we'll probably spend a little while with Rapture JSON just to see what we can do. Rapture JSON is the most complete of all the modules. It's the only one I've released as a version 1 point something so far. So the first thing I'll import is Rapture JSON itself. Now, the library does not. You've probably noticed that there are a variety of libraries, of JSON libraries for Scala. Who uses spray? Anyone? So there's probably about 6 or 7 people using spray. Anyone using play? Jason? More? Okay, so that's probably maybe 15. Anyone using Jackson? Yeah. Anyone using Argonaut? Just you, Ryan. Anyone using Lift, Jason? Okay. What else is there? Anyone using Jawn? Yay. It's like my name in your accent, but not in my accent. Jawn. So Jawn is written by Eric Osheim, and it's pretty fast. It's one of several different backends you can use with Rapture. In the snapshot jar I sent you, you can use Jawn. In the real world, published on Sonatype, you can actually use any of those JSON libraries I mentioned before as a backend. Now that is a parser, and it is an AST representation. So Rapture is deliberately very agnostic about how the JSON is represented internally and how you parse it, because there might be subtle differences which matter, which in my abstraction I don't want to worry about. I don't want to make a feature of Rapture. So in order to do anything with Rapture, you do need to import a backend. If, for example, I try and parse just some simple JSON, it will tell me it can't find a parser for strings. So what I'm going to do is import JSON backends.jawn._, and then that same line should work. And indeed, I should be able to parse that source there. Okay. Is that working? Has anyone encountered any problems yet with
What's sample again?
sample? Is that? Sorry, you need to shout on this side. How do you get the content from the sample? So if you type this, if you type URI and then a string and then that dot, you'll need some imports as well. That will give you the sample, but actually, seeing as you missed the first bit, maybe if you go to that URL just using curl and then copy and paste it into a string, that's probably easiest rather than going over the material again. Is that okay? All right, so how far did we get? We had, did I try and parse that? Yeah, I did. So I'm going to say val JSON equals, I'll do it again, JSON.parse, source. Okay, so this has type JSON. Now JSON fundamentally is a dynamic thing. It represents dynamically typed content. Now we can see here that we've got, for example, a JSON object that's got a groups key. So one thing we can do is we can just do JSON.groups. We can just type that name, whatever it happens to be, from the runtime object, and Scala is happy to compile that, and it will dereference that inside the JSON object and give you this content here, which is the same content that starts there. Yeah, I'll show it there. That one? That is actually, I'll show you the full one. It's rapture.json.that. Sorry, I'm deaf in this ear. I can't hear. So. The first, so okay, maybe if you do this, rapture._uri._ codec._ encodings.utf8. What else did I have? io._ net._ Is that all of them? So that's a list. So while you're doing that, I'll just talk about imports briefly. Rapture is quite import heavy, and I've gone along the route of taking advantage of what Scala provides for scoping of imports. And it's a very convenient way of delimiting where you want something to apply, where in particular maybe you want an implicit to apply. So a lot of these packages contain implicits that maybe change the behavior. For example, the encodings there. That encoding will be applicable anywhere within the scope that import applies. So if you import at the top of the file, that file will use throughout UTF-8 as the assumed encoding. And I use this for configuration and a few other things. You'll see several examples later. Is everyone doing okay? Sorry if this is a bit slow for the people who aren't following along. So we had our JSON. Let me reparse it. We have this JSON value. We can call JSON dot anything we like, which could be a key in this object. So I showed you groups before, and you can see this is now a JSON array. We can, for example, get the first element of that, and this is an object, and we can then get the members key. This is another list, so we can then get, say, the first one. There's Paul McCartney, and we can get the name, and that's a string. But this is all done entirely in the dynamic world. So this uses Scala's dynamic trait to allow you to basically type any method name, and it will happily compile. Now, Rapture guarantees that won't actually ever cause a problem at runtime. It won't throw an exception. Yeah, you got to shout out. No hands up.
Any something similar to the XPath where //
Yeah.
like all names?
You can, yeah. So if I did JSON / groups as a string, that will do the same thing. If you wanted to use that style.
No, I meant to just
To get everything.
JSON /name.
So what you wanted to? I wonder if that works. Let's have a look. I can't remember if I implemented this. It gives us an empty list, which means it probably hasn't worked, but it's had a go. I suspect what's happened is I've not implemented it across arrays. I think if you had.
Just try something else.
So if I did that will work, and it comes up as an array of arrays, which is
Top level. I'm saying something that's.
well, it happens to be in the top level. Unfortunately, everything else. Let me do it with a. Okay, this is a good opportunity to show you some a JSON literal. By the way, this is all really good because it gives me an opportunity to show different things that other people might be thinking at the same time. So we can write a JSON literal like this, and anything inside here can be JSON. So that's some JSON. So I can for example do foo bar. This is all fine. I'll answer your question in a second. One thing you might do is accidentally make a mistake. What will happen here? Parse failure. It's a parse failure, but it happens at compile time. So this uses a macro to actually check that your JSON is the right format. And even if you had val x equals foo in there, and we were to write $x, it knows that that is okay, and it will substitute foo in there. If, for example, I put the $x in that position, this is also a compile failure. So it makes sure that you substitute things in the right place and that they are of a suitable type. I couldn't, for example, if this substituted value was, say, new exception, that clearly won't work. It can't serialize exceptions because there's no sense in that. It's also in the wrong position, but the serialization problem occurs first. So back here where we have a literal that maybe contains somewhere nested deep within a quux. Now we're wondering if we can do res32 / quux. Yeah, there we are. So you've spotted a bug, which is great. If anyone wants to go to the GitHub page and please do.
Just for a step, can you do more than one box?
Yeah.
So we can get more than one.
I can't remember how many of those there are meant to be. Not that many. Let's just fix it like that. And then we do res35 quux. Okay. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me that worked.
Now, it's interesting that now you have two types, so if you try to test it.
Okay, so yeah, I haven't actually shown you how to do anything useful with this yet, because you will have noticed that I always get a JSON type back. And you might wonder, how do you call a method on a JSON type when actually that consistently just dereferences the object? It's like, how could you, if you've got a string, if we've got this one, and we go for the first element there, got hello, this is obviously a string. If you were to do substring of 3, what would this do? You might hope it would just return LO. But substring looks like accessing a key in an object called substring, and the 3 looks like accessing the 4th element of the array that's at that key. So this won't work. We get back undefined. I'll talk a bit about undefined in a second. So what we have to do is we have to move from the dynamic world to the static world. And there's one method called as, which will take you there. So get this as a string, and we've got a string. It's a real, genuine string. The as is the single point where a failure can occur. Yes?
Can you go back to where you use this res36 example? Can you use functional combinators on those?
Can I use?
Kind of like a map or flat map or filter on this like JSON that sort of wraps.
Oh, my hearing's just come back. I've been waiting a week. No, it's gone again. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
Can you use like a functional combinator on these like JSON objects that wrap collection-like looking things? Like could I kind of do a map or a filter or a flat map?
Not on the JSON objects themselves.
Yeah.
You have to move to the static world first.
Yeah, as something, right?
You have to do as something. Yeah, exactly.
As like a list of whatever.
Yeah. But you could do it as an iterator, say, and make it lazy. But yeah, my hearing is coming in and out now. So we had this example here. We made it a string, and this is a real string. Now, if for example we try to get an integer, this will be a failure. This is an exception. It's type mismatch, and it expected a number but found a string. Maybe there's a better example than this I can show you. If we go json.groups 0.members one dot. Now, something that doesn't exist is foo. Now, this didn't fail. There's no exception thrown. I don't want to have the possibility of an exception being thrown for every dynamic access I do, because that's kind of unsafe. What I want to do is find out at the single point where I move from dynamic to static that something was wrong. So if I try and get a string here, that is where I get a failure. And furthermore, have I gone through 2 errors there? No, it's just a massive stack trace. It says that the value's missing, and it gives us quite conveniently a path to the thing that was missing. Now, in this particular example, it was foo. If, for example, I tried to get element 10 from the groups, and I go back to the top of that stack trace, we get told that it's element 10 that doesn't exist. Even though we're accessing foo, the first point of failure was element 10 of groups. So hopefully that's quite useful when you're trying to debug why your JSON hasn't passed. Yeah.
Can you take your as an option so that your undefined can be?
Yeah. So in the published version of Rapture, that works. In my snapshot here, I think that will fail, but let's give it a go. So we would hope to get none back here. We actually get an exception, but the API, the design is that you can request an option and you'll get none back in the cases where it fails. So this is work in progress. It's actually taken, because I wanted to show you some things that aren't actually released yet, but I couldn't separate them from some other work in progress that's actually broken some existing features. So that I think is the biggest single thing that's not working at the moment. But the released version, that will work. You can also get a try. So you can request a try of string. It'll either give you a success of the answer or a failure. Okay, so this is dynamic access, which is fine when you're accessing a single element, and it's quite convenient when you're working in the REPL just to sort of quickly navigate through. And the syntax is pretty straightforward. It's like the only difference between Rapture JSON syntax and plain JavaScript is that you need to have the as call at the end that does the static transformation. Yeah.
Can you define in the REPL, case class as an extract?
I was going to do that next, actually. Yeah. So we had. Let's go back to this JSON value here. We've got groups here. So, well, it looks like there's a repeated object type here that has a name and an integer for the born date. So let's create a case class called member, which has a name, which is a string, and a born, which is an int. Okay, then let's say JSON.groups. My ear is doing all kinds of things at the moment. Dot members, first one dot as member. So we literally just define the case class. I said we literally just define the case class. I've no idea why that's not working. It might be because I've imported stuff twice. Let me just restart this and get back to where we were. Okay, case class member. Actually, somewhere up here should be that definition. Now JSON dot, let's see if we can find that one again as well. That's very odd. This has worked fine for ages. Let me,
What's the result from these numbers? Maybe it's not exactly what expected.
no, it should be. I'm going to try it with a slightly different. I've run all sorts of stuff there, haven't I? Right, last try before I give up on this. Case class member name string born int. Oh, this is a Scala bug actually. I think I made some changes to macros to use quasi quotes, and it used to work fine in the REPL, then didn't work in when I ran exactly the same code in Scala C. So maybe we'll see that again. But last try. Oh, thank you. Yay, okay. So the snapshot jar I built for you, especially for today, has some sort of issue with it that means that this doesn't work. Maybe I've missed off macro paradise. You shouldn't need macro paradise at runtime, should you? Anyway, I'll leave that as an open question.
For what is worth, the option extraction works for me.
Option works for you?
Yeah.
Remarkable. Maybe, I don't know. I've put something when I knocked together that jar file for today. I obviously did something wrong, but or something right in your case. Yeah. So we can. You asked about extracting members. We can extract a member. By the way, this is all happening because I cobbled together this snapshot for my work in progress. So if you use release version 1.1, then this largely doesn't happen. Now we've grabbed a member there. What we could do is try and get more than one. Let's try and get a set of members, because the Beatles were a set. And just by defining this member case class, we can therefore extract immediately any collection of these. So we can do a set. Who's got a favourite collection type from the standard library at least? Sorry?
Stream.
Never tried stream before. There we are, there's a stream. Res6 dot, what is it, next? What's the, let's just do that. There they all are. So you can extract any collection type that works with can build from. Now we've still had to write groups, .members, .as, and so on. Maybe we can define a group as well. So case class group. Now that had a name, I think. Was it called name or band name? Anyway, let's try and get name. And we've got a set of members, which is a set of member like that. We define the group, and then let's remind myself. So this JSON contains several groups. So JSON.groups.as. Sorry?
Group name.
Oh, thank you. If I redefine this, it will override the previous version. This is fine to do in the REPL. Groups0.as group, and that's worked. We've extracted successfully a statically typed case class. Yeah.
What about the case that you have a complete JSON and you want some default values in your
This is an open bug. I would like to provide that feature because I think it would be quite useful. There are ways to do it at the moment, but they're a bit convoluted. So yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have a case class that doesn't have everything defined and just substitute in the values that aren't specified. At the moment, it'll just fail to match, unfortunately. Okay, now we can define one more case class, which will be, I don't know, what should we call it? It's something that's going to be the whole thing. Data, why not? And that has a groups, which is a, sorry? Yeah, let's do vector. Why not? And we can just do JSON.as data. So by defining 3 case classes, given some already parsed JSON, in this short command here, we can actually transform that from dynamically typed JSON to statically typed Scala. Now that's not to say it'll work. There might be a problem. So there might be a mistake in the JSON, for example. So if I try and get an empty object as data, we'll get a failure. Who likes exceptions as a solution to things going wrong? Nobody's put their hand up. Good. How would you rather deal with an exception or a failure? Did someone say either? Yeah, someone said try. Scala says disjunction. Can't actually do that, but I need to write some code that allows that. All the others you have as options available to you as to how failures are handled. Now this is a feature which is part of Rapture Core, which is a project that's common to all of the Rapture modules and sort of defines how they work. They're all written to allow you to choose how things are returned, how your failures are handled. So if I import rapture.core, we then have a number of modes available to us. So if I import modes.return try._, this command, exactly the same as we did before, will now return a try. Is that weird? A little bit weird, yeah. The return value of as. So the it's a path dependent type. Well, it's a dependent method type based on an implicit mode which it gets from scope, and it involves a higher kinded type, and it's quite complex. So I'm sort of telling you the implementation of modes, which is it's like I said at the beginning. There's some complex stuff behind the scenes that you don't normally see. But in use, you get this magic where you just import a mode and your return type magically changes. If, for example, I change this return try to return either, we get either here. So this allows you to pull in an import to some scope, maybe a file, maybe a whole application, and you get to decide how your errors are handled. So in the REPL, it's probably most of the time very convenient to just have the raw value returned or an exception thrown. If the exception is thrown, no harm's really done. You can change the line that you just typed in, fix it as you want to, and then maybe it'll be successful the next time. In production, that's something you really don't want to do. You want to take advantage of the type system and the ways it provides to safely handle exceptions. So is anyone feeling uneasy about modes? Excited? What did I do to get it to work for as? So the implementation of, I'll just see if the implementation of as is.
I'm encountering that same problem with it. You said error cannot extract. How did you get around that error you were experiencing earlier around using as?
How did I get around the error?
I must be in a different state. I'm trying to do JSON.as data, and it's just saying cannot extract type data from.
Oh, yeah. So this is the I got around it by using my local copy rather than the jar that I gave you. What you can do is try and get it as a string, and you'll see the same issue. So the primitive types you can extract as using the jar I bundled up. Case classes, I think because of macros, don't work, unfortunately. Yeah.
Are there any Rapture modes that conflict with each other?
Oh, okay. So there's a way around that. So you'll see that I imported 2 different modes here, and it happily just went for the most recent one. The way, well, it's I had to work hard to make this to make it work like that. What used to happen in the old implementation was that you would import one, then you'd import another one, and then you'd get ambiguous implicits because there's two in scope at the same time and it just didn't know which one to use. It uses a cunning trick. So you'll notice that almost all my imports, I think in fact all my imports, are wildcard imports. Return either and return try both contain a single implicit value, which has exactly the same name in both cases. So when you import this one, it will shadow any previous ones with the same name, so they aren't seen. Now, it's impossible to access them if you just type the name in, but it's also impossible for them to be found by implicit search. So this is maybe the one single time in Scala that shadowing is actually something you want. It's kind of convenient to be able to simply switch between different modes by just importing a new one. That works fine outside the REPL as well.
Why is it desirable to have this style of overloading?
Overloading?
Well,
As in shadowing, not overloading. That's the thing. It's desirable because you can pick and choose in sequence without having to introduce a complete new scope. So normally to get this behaviour, otherwise we'd have to sort of stick curly braces around a chunk of code and import the mode exclusively within that. In the REPL, I frequently want to change mode, and I've already got.
Is it just for the REPL that this works?
It's certainly it works everywhere. So if you had just a single method implemented in a file, you could import things in turn, and it would always pick the most recent one.
And so if you have different developers writing different modules in different modes, and
Yeah.
you try and move a function from one module to the other,
So as in you copy paste.
you're doing some kind of refactoring.
You're doing
So you
refactoring,
decide,
yeah.
This function really belongs in this.
So maybe the return type changes, but it's statically typed, statically checked. So the compiler will tell you. It won't be a surprise. But I mean, in some cases that doesn't matter, or at least in some cases it's not a big issue, because for example, try is monadic, at least in the sense that you can put it in a for comprehension. Another mode you can use is future. So I actually I discovered this, that you can use return and future provided you've got an implicit execution context. So Scala.concurrent, come on, tab completion. There we are. Oh, it's gone really slow. Concurrent dot. Can anyone remember the path? It's execution content, isn't it? Execution context dot global dot. It's just global. Okay. So now if we call that, oh, we got a failure. What's happening there?
Oh, but
I don't know what's going on there. It's reverted back to the. Sorry?
back to the default.
Yeah, it's reverted back to the default. I'm not sure why. I'll have to look at that. Anyway, you can in theory. Let me just recover back to where we were. You can, in theory, use a future and have everything execute on the fork join pool, which is kind of cool that it only takes an import to do that. It doesn't magically transform synchronous code into asynchronous, but it will execute that code asynchronously. Let's try it again. Global, and Is that definitely the right thing? Actually, it's not new, is it? It's implicit, it's not global. That's the problem. That's why it didn't work before. Sorry?
What you said, you have to define it.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I see, right, okay. Import rapture.core.modes.return future ._ and then json.parse. That will be done asynchronously. We get a future back.
Can you type it within the future? You want a future string or a future try rather than so.
Well, it's a future JSON. Oh, so you're saying can you have a try within a future? You can actually compose these things. So I won't show that because it's kind of complicated and it probably won't work on my first attempt. But what you can say is return futures, compose, return try, make that implicit. That is your mode, and then it will return a future of a try. And you can compose several of these together and get it to do all sorts of things. Like it can, for example, log every time as well as a side effect of some operation. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry to ask.
No, you're welcome to. That's what you're meant to do.
I'm not Rapture savvy, so before we run out of time, can you just say a few high-level words about kind of at high level
Okay.
what it is, where it stands in the ecosystem, what it is in terms of stability and release, and put some context around it?
Yeah, okay. So I can point you to the. I'd like to point you to the website, but my browser has stopped working. So you can go to the. So there's a lot of information on the GitHub page for Rapture. Okay, right. My browser is freaking out.
Well, like in your own words, where do you see it fitting in the ecosystem and
What I wanted to do is sort of show you the. I've got a philosophy page which kind of describes a little bit about that, which will actually act as a cue for me to sort of remind myself what the right things to say are. So, Rapture.io is the website. It's a little bit incomplete, but so I've listed 6 things here, which are sort of guiding philosophy for the library. It's meant to be intuitive. It's meant to be possible to read a line of Rapture and understand what that does just by looking at it. Separating, for example, the sort of globally scoped declarative stuff from the actual actions you want to perform. It's meant to be configurable, so you can, for example, import different things to make it work in different ways. Type safety is probably the number one thing. I'm doing as much as I can all the time to make it more and more type safe, and to use the type system rather than be constrained by it. Extensible. If features aren't there, you can add type classes to provide functionality. Idiomatic, it's meant to be idiomatic. Unopinionated. This is quite important because and it kind of answers your question. I hope it will answer your question about how it fits into the ecosystem. Rapture doesn't by default have any dependencies, any external dependencies. What I wanted to do is provide better ways of using existing things that are out there. So, as with the JSON library, it can use any of 7 or 8 different backends for JSON. Now, if you're already using Play or you're already using Argonaut, you can use Rapture with them just by changing an import. So you import JSON backends dot something, and it will provide you with a nicer front end for working with those libraries, while still allowing you to access the existing functionalities from those particular JSON libraries. You don't have to convert the types. You simply wrap them in a JSON type. There's an XML library which is work in progress, but close to completion, which takes kind of the same philosophy. At the moment, it allows you to use the standard library XML parser and structure, but you could write a type class that allows it to work with one of the Java XML libraries instead. So unopinionated is kind of a key thing. I don't want to tell people how to use it. I don't want to say if you're using Rapture, then you've got to use Scala Z, or you've got to use shapeless. Those are deliberately not dependencies. I've got an HTML library that's much more experimental. One day it might see the light of day, but at the moment it's not ready for public use, really. But I've made it so that it doesn't. It'll work with Jetty. It'll work with Netty. It will work with Spray, if you want to use those. So I've tried to be as agnostic as possible and to accommodate other people's libraries without interfering as much as I can. What was there more I could answer?
What's the stability and is it? Do you see it as appropriate for commercial environments yet? Or where does it stand?
Yeah. Okay. So the JSON library, version 1.1, which is released and has passed the test suite, unlike the stuff I've shown you today, that is ready for use, and you can use that already with the 7 or 8 different backends. The modes, if you wanted to use that mode functionality in your own libraries, that is usable, that works, and you could do that. But that's more from the point of view of a library developer. You can't use modes unless the methods have been written to expect to use them, obviously. The IO library is very much guinea pig material. People are using it. I use it. I use it in production, but I sort of know the ugly details that maybe. The things that concern me more are that APIs will change rather than things aren't implemented correctly. So as development's gone on, I've sort of noticed things which I want to change, which aren't quite how I want them, and at the back of my mind, I know I don't want to release it and call it version 1.0 when I've got intentions of changing these things. So that's those IO and JSON are the 2 main libraries. JSON is production ready. The others, I would say not, unless you're willing to become part of the development in posting bug reports. Other libraries there's a command line interface that does deals with parsing command line arguments, and will also do tab completion. It's got quite a nice way of allowing you to do that. There's an HTML library, there's a web server library. There's the kinds of things I work on are things where there's an interaction between something untyped and something typed. That's where I'm hoping to sort of provide intuitive APIs that help make that transition easier and give you better type safety around them. Does that kind of answer the question? Generally, I've not gone with a 1.0 release until I'm happy to say that this is at least as I wanted it at the time. If I'm uncertain about the implementations or the APIs, then I've been reluctant to release it. That hasn't stopped many people using it, though. There are people who are braver than maybe they should be. Yeah. I'm probably out of time, aren't I? Yeah. So I can answer more questions rather than probably going through REPL examples if anyone has them. No. I don't know. I've had big problems with SBT, which is why I dumped that jar on you, rather than just providing a simple SBT build. I find very frequently that I rebuild things, and it caches something in older versions. And I have to delete my, when I'm developing with SBT, I have to delete my Ivy cache before I build anything. So I frequently find myself rebuilding the whole world. I mean, maybe the problem is that Rapture is a collection of about, it's probably 30 to 40 modules, projects, each of which is a compile step. The reason there's so many is that I've separated out the dependencies between them. So for example, the JSON library and the IO library, you can, for example, and this was the question someone over here asked, can you parse straight from a URL? You can write json.parse, type the URL in there, and that will work. But to provide that functionality, the question is, should I provide should I have a dependency from my JSON library on the IO library, or should my IO library depend on my JSON library? Well, I don't want either of them to depend, because I don't want people to have to pull in tons and tons of dependencies just to use JSON. So what I do is I have a third project which depends on both JSON and on IO, and that provides the that. Where were we going? Okay. I'm wondering if it's my ear again. Yeah, so I have a third project which depends on each of those. If you want to use that particular functionality, you need that additional dependency that links the two. But this problem is that it ends up being multiplicative over all the different libraries, essentially. So I have many tiny little projects that are just type classes that depend on two others. We end up with 30 or 40 of them rather than 6 or 7. And I think for some reason SBT gets tied in knots trying to work out what it needs to recompile and what it doesn't. And I've had big problems. I've had problems with build systems my whole life. I've been using Scala 10 or 11 years, and like build systems, it's still an unsolved problem.
When are you going to 2.11?
Say again?
2.11?
It all works fine on 2.11. It's just that the jar I provided is 2.10 only. So version 1.1 of Rapture JSON is out for 2.10 and 2.11. I do most of my development in 2.10 because then I'm naturally backwards compatible. It's easier to be forwards compatible for 2.11 than it is going the other way. Any other questions? Questions not relating to Rapture? No? Okay. Thank you.